Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the invitation to bring my program to Ollie Rutland today. And thank you very much, all you folks, for coming out today. I hope you'll enjoy the program. And I hope I'm ready for this. I was relying on modern technology to get me here. What does that tell you? Yeah. I think Dan's introduction pretty much covered what I would say before I get going. I have been performing and touring and recording for a long time. The part of my career that's most meaningful to me personally is actually creating the music. So I have written a few hundred songs and have had the opportunity to record over 100 of them. And probably the songs that are most meaningful to me, and the reason I'm here today, is because there are 4 volumes of Banjo Dan Songs of Vermont that I've recorded over the many years. So I'll be talking about some of the songs on there, where I got the ideas, the inspiration, why I wrote them, what they mean to me, and maybe a little bit about the recording process. I'll try to not talk too much because I would like to sing some of the songs for you. When I first came to Vermont, that was about 1969, I think. I was living in Franklin County, working in St. Albans, and I happened to go in the bank one day. And on a little counter, there was a pile of little booklets, said the St. Albans Raid. Okay, I'm a Flatlander, right? I have no idea what that's about. You folks know about the St. Albans Raid, probably. You better. Otherwise, it's going to be a history lesson all day today. I picked up the booklet, went home and read it, and I was totally blown away. Civil War action right here in Vermont, hundreds of miles from where the war was being fought, and St. Albans, just a few miles from the border. So I read about the raiders, these escaped Confederate prisoners who got together in Montreal, made their way down to St. Albans and hatched this plot to rob all the banks, steal all the horses they could get, and shoot up the town and head back to Canada. And they pulled it off, as you know. It was an amazing caper. They got back to Canada with $200,000. Well, this gave me the idea to write a song. I had already been writing some songs. Excuse me. If I have to cough, it's going to be awful loud here. But this is the first time I got the idea of taking a true Vermont historical event and making a song out of it. Well, the challenge is I have this booklet, 22 pages, tiny print, with all this information. Now, the songs that I write might take 3.5 minutes. How am I going to get all that info in a little song? So it's an exercise in self-discipline and economy and everything. But as you'll see during the program today, I've sort of made a career out of specializing in these story songs. I'll tell you about several of them today. Well, that was the first one. That was my first Vermont album. Did that in 1987. After living in Franklin County for just a little while, I got together with a friend of mine, an old college roommate, Al Davis, and he was in Vermont. He was a Boston boy. He was in Vermont teaching school, and we decided we'd buy some property together. This was in the days when you didn't have to be a multimillionaire to buy a two-room ranch house, If you've been in touch with the real estate market at all, you know what I'm talking about. It's pretty tough. But we were able to buy over 100 acres in Marshfield, mostly woods, some cleared land, and this was in the late 60s, early 70s, you will remember. This is the era of back to the land, living the good life, right? And sort of the hippie days. And I guess we were part of that scenario. We built a couple little houses there. We were cutting all our own firewood, raising chickens and pigs. And after my St. Albans sweetie, who is now my wife back there, Jay, after she came down, she brought a bunch of sap buckets and spouts, and then we were making syrup. So it was a good life in a beautiful place. and I decided to write a song. And this will be the first one I'm going to try to sing for you, if I can find my voice. I've never been a solo performer. I've always had a band or a duo or something, and I usually play the banjo, as you might suspect, but the guitar is better for just accompanying a song. When I recorded this, I had my friend Al sing the lead vocal because he has this wonderful, mellow, resonant voice, and his voice was just right for this song. I've always done that throughout my career, recording all the songs that I've written. Sometimes it seems to me that my voice is going to be the best, and just as often I'll find somebody else to sing it. I'm going to try to sing for you today. The title song from the first album is called I'll Take the Hills. And somebody can tell me if the guitar is too loud or the voice or whatever, and we'll fix that. When the day is done, I stand and listen to the silence all around. There's not a sound in the setting sun, only the robin's song drifting through the trees on a gentle breeze. I'll take the hills and the valleys full of sunshine. I'll take the long days working with my hands. I'll take the fields and the forest in the moonlight. I'll take my chances living from the land. There's an ebb and flow and a rhythm to the seasons of the year. My choice is clear, for I've come to know when you work within the natural scheme of things, what joy it brings. I'll take the hills and the valleys full of sunshine. I'll take the long days working with my hands. I'll take the fields and the forest in the moonlight. I'll take my chances living from the land. To each his own. Let the great ambitions drive the great men on. From dawn to dawn, I'll stay at home, and I'll just tend my little peaceful plot of earth. For all it's worth, I'll take the hills and the valleys full of sunshine. I'll take the long days working with my hands. I'll take the fields and the forest in the moonlight. I'll take my chances living from the land. I'll take the hills. Thank you. I don't consider this to be a concert. You don't have to applaud. You can if you want to. I'm going to try singing another one for you. This song is really important to me, and I'll tell you why. It's called Old Dan, but it's not about me. And when I wrote it, I was young Dan. It's about a pair of workhorses, in fact, and it was inspired by a team working on a farm there in Marshfield, where I was living at the time. And the reason this song's important to me is because I've had more feedback on this song than any other, in terms of people saying that it touched them, it moved them, it meant something to them. So I don't get rich writing Vermont songs, I'll guarantee you. But that kind of feedback is rewarding. Jay doesn't like me to sing this song. It's a sad one, but it's called Old Dan. My eyes are wet with tears. Old Dan won't be hitching up today. the barnyard, just standing all alone, his weary head hung down as if to say, it's a heavy load to haul. I don't know as I can make it without the one I've always had to pull by my side. Seems a long way to climb to that sweet grassy meadow where someday we'll be resting side by side. Day after day for 20 years we hitched up side by side and never saw the load we couldn't haul. And if I ever falter, well then just pull the harder. He never seemed to mind the work at all. In the springtime we'd be plowing, in summer mowing hay, then fall's time to fetch the harvest in. Through winter's icy snowdrifts we'd be dragging out the logs till March would bring the sugar time again. And that county fair time, how our golden coats would shine, our harness medals sparkled in the sun. When the pulling contest came, we put them all to shame. We beat the other teams by half a ton. For the peaceful, snowy evenings, when the work was finally done, we'd shelter in a dark and drafty barn. Dan would lean his big old shaggy head across my neck. We'd nuzzle close to keep each other warm. It's a heavy load to haul, and I don't know as I can make it without the one I've always had to pull by my side. Seems a long way to climb to that sweet grassy meadow where someday we'll be resting side by side. So come on, Tom, it's getting late. The morning's nearly gone. We can't stand here and reminisce all day. The time has come to hitch up for the hardest job of all, to take old Dan up to his resting place. It's a heavy road to haul. I don't know I can make it without the one I've always had to pull by my side. Seems a long way to climb to that sweet grassy meadow where someday we'll be resting side by side. That's old Dan. I love those workhorses. We always go to the pulling contests and everything when we go to the fair, Rutland Fair, what have you. And a lot of workhorses are named Dan. So I'm just Bob and Dick and Bess and so on. I really had nothing in mind when I wrote that. I wrote it about a team of horses. But I think the reason people have often come up and told me that it was meaningful to them because you could extrapolate that. It could be a team, a pair, a couple of any species, including our own. There's another song on the first album, I'll Take the Hills, that is pretty special to me because it's my mom's favorite song. And many, many years ago, Jay and I were walking in the Green Mount Cemetery in Montpelier, and back up on a hill, back up in a corner, there was this exquisite sculpture of a little girl. Her name was Margaret Pitkin. She died in 1901, 1902.
1999 when she was 7 years old.
1899?
Yes, sorry.
That's close enough. She was 7 years old. She died of scarlet fever. Beautiful, beautiful little girl, sweet, talented, just very beloved. And her parents commissioned a local stone artist to create this wonderful monument in the likeness of the little girl. You may have seen, of course I got here late, but I got some photos back there of the sculpture, the monument, and also a photo of the little girl. And we just happened to have the photo that the stone artist worked from to create this wonderful sculpture. Well, Margaret is leaning on a little fence rail, and behind her hand was a pile of pennies. Well, we've gone back to see her countless times. Sometimes she has more, sometimes she has fewer. And this past fall, I went to see little Margaret. Well, she didn't just have pennies. She had nickels, dimes, quarters. It's a sign of the times, right? They're on her feet, on her shoulders, on her head. But originally it was just pennies for years. And so when I wrote the song, the last verse says, many who wander by her grave on the hill stop to leave her a penny or two. And each copper coin bears a wish and a prayer for the happiness that she once knew. So that's the song about Margaret. And we took my mom to see. My mom loved the song and very sentimental. And we took her to see the sculpture in the cemetery there. And of course, she fell in love with little Margaret too. Another song on that first album that I think is really cool. It's called The Ghost of Goldbrook Bridge. Everybody loves a ghost story, right? Yeah. This story is about a woman named Emily. And Emily is living on the family farm, just Emily and her father. And she has a very sad existence because she's over 30. This would be 150, I don't know, long time. She's over 30, she's never been married, has no children. She's a spinster, she's considered an old lady. Finally, a man comes around courting. His name is Donald, and they fall in love. They want to get married. So they are going to do the honorable thing. They're going to ask her father for permission. And the old man says no. Maybe she was a good cook or a good laundress. I don't know, but anyhow, he wasn't having anything to do with that. Well, they decided they're going to elope. They make this elaborate plan. They're going to meet in the Goldbrook Bridge. Now, this is a real place. It's a covered bridge over the Goldbrook, just south of Stowe. And they're going to meet there at midnight and run away and get married. Emily is so excited. Nothing like this ever happened to her, right? She was an old lady. She sews her wedding gown, beautiful wedding gown. She sews it all in secret. And on the appointed night, they're going to meet at midnight. On the appointed night, she sneaks out of the house in her wedding gown. She goes to the Goldbrook Bridge, and she goes in. It's almost midnight, okay. Midnight comes, and Donald isn't there. She waits, and she waits, and she waits. Oh, yeah. And that son of a gun never did show up. So Emily she's getting frantic. It starts to get light outside. She's thinking the neighbors are out doing their chores, and she's going to run home in her wedding gown and be humiliated once again. Well, in desperation, she hangs herself from a rafter in the Goldbrook Bridge, which has been haunted ever since, of course. So I wrote the song, and I sort of envisioned a man in more modern times. He's driving down a dark, lonely road, and his car breaks down, and he has to start walking, and he comes to the covered bridge, and he steps inside, sort of very wary, and he looks around and hears this, and it's the ghost. And the ghost materializes and tells her story. So this song is set up almost like a little operetta with two characters. Well, I got my two very favorite singers, a guy named Paul Miller. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or seen him, but wonderful singer. Sang the introductory part, the man, you know, on the dark road, and then the ghost sitting right over there with a little cap on. That's my wife Jay, and always been my favorite singer. And she got to sing the part of Emily, the ghost, and she got to wail in 3-part harmony. That was a trip, huh? Yeah. So that's the story. We did after the song was recorded several years later. Jay and I went to the Goldbrook Bridge on a Halloween at midnight. We were sure if the ghost is there, she's going to show up on Halloween, right? We go in there at midnight, stand around, look around. The ghost never did show up that night, but that doesn't prove anything one way or the other. Last year, I was in urgent care. I don't remember what I was there for. I was in urgent care. I was sitting in a little room, you know, and the nurse walks in. She's got a name tag. What does it say? Emily. I said, Emily, that's one of my favorite names. I wrote a song about a woman named Emily, and she said, let me guess, it's the ghost. And I said, right. And I said, well, my wife and I went to the Goldbrook Bridge midnight one night, and we were hoping to see the ghost, but we didn't see her. And the nurse said, yeah, but I did. And I said, whoa, tell me about that. She said, I went to the Goldbrook Bridge, midnight, went inside, looked around, didn't see anything. Then I looked out the far end, you know, the opening of the covered bridge, and here's this white form that drifted across slowly. She said, I'm sure that was the ghost of Emily. So I said, yeah, it probably was. Anyhow, we didn't see her, but somebody did. We're going to move on to the second volume of my Vermont songs. The first, I'll Take the Hills, by the way, is 1987. The Catamount CD is 1994. As you know, this part of North America was originally, before the European settlers came, it was all forested. The catamount, also known as the eastern mountain lion, was the apex predator, a creature of the forest. In the 19th century, when Vermont was clear-cut, mostly for sheep farming, the catamount was crowded out or died out, whatever. The last one, according to official state records, was shot in Barnard, 1881. You can still see that. We saw that cat in the, it's in a glass cabinet now in the State Historical Museum. That was supposedly the last one, but you know, the reports keep coming on to this day. People are sure they've seen a catamount. The wildlife guy, fish and wildlife people go out and they look for tracks and everything. They can never prove it, but who knows? I just thought it was the idea of the catamount never leaving or maybe coming back was a pretty good idea. So I wrote this song. I'm just going to sing you the chorus. Did you see something slipping through the shadowing pond? Did the snow show off instead of tracks? Did you hear something screaming like a banshee in the night? And would it be the kind of back? That's just the chorus. And then there's several verses that tell about the catamount, where you know it tells its story and how maybe it has come back. Well, I decided for this song it might be effective to have the verses narrated rather than sung, you know, against a musical background. So I had my friend Al. Once again, I called on him, and not because of his great singing voice, but in this case because I think it was 1987, he and a partner founded the very first microbrewery in Vermont. Does anyone but me remember the Catamount Brewing Company? Yeah. And their flagship product, Catamount Pale Ale. Pretty good. So I thought I would have Al do the vocal on this. So that's The Catamount is Back. Let's see. Does anybody here remember the Arch Bridge? One. Okay. Somewhere in the 1980s, I saw a newspaper article about the Arch Bridge. And the story of what happened when they went to take it down and replace it with a new bridge is an amazing story, and I'll get to it. I decided this, I had already, like the ghost story I found in the newspaper and the St. Albans Raid and so on, that booklet. I decided to do some serious research. Well, I spent a long time in I call it the catacombs of the Vermont State Library, where they have microfilm from newspaper articles going way, way back. So here's what I found out. The Arch Bridge, which crossed the Connecticut River from Rockingham over to North Walpole, it was still standing when I came to Vermont, by the way. Beautiful structure, just this really graceful, beautiful arch. It was completed in 1905. The cost was $40,000, a heck of a lot of money at the time. And it was a real big deal. It was the pride of the valley. Let's see, they got all the finest craftsmen they could find and the best materials. And when they cut the ribbon, there were bands playing, and politicians talking about the progress of man and how this wonderful structure was going to last forever and a day, and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know how politicians go on and on, like banjo players. In any case, come the 1970s, late 70s, the highway department was looking, and it's a little rust over there and here, and this thing was built in the horse and buggy days. It might not even be safe anymore, so they closed it down. Opened to pedestrians for a little while. They brought in an engineering firm who said, for $6 or $7 million, we could tear that old thing down and build a modern concrete bridge that really will last forever and a day. Well, they made this elaborate plan. They weren't going to just take the bridge down. By God, they were going to blow it up. This big dramatic event. So they put the word out, and people really gathered from far and near, because everybody loves a ghost story, and everybody loves a big explosion, right? That's why I don't go to the movies anymore. You can't see a movie or a television special without huge fireballs and cars flying through the air. Anyhow, so they were going to blow it up. All right, people gathered on a Sunday morning. They touch off this huge explosion. Smoke fills the valley. The smoke blows away. Guess what? The bridge is still standing. Yeah. I can almost imagine the bridge saying to itself, "Gosh, what was that? Did somebody touch off a little firecracker?" Anyhow, they tried 2 or 3 more times that same. They couldn't blow it up, right? Built for the horse and buggy traffic, yeah. They had to come back the next day with acetylene torches and drop it into the river piecemeal. And sure enough, they built a modern concrete bridge. We drove over it last year, and you wouldn't even know it's there. There was this big, beautiful arch, and now just. So in the song that I wrote, I say, now the 18-wheelers rumble on a modern concrete bridge, just like anywhere or nowhere, USA. It's too bad, but there's a moral to the story, and that comes in the very last part of the song. If it ain't broke, exactly. I knew you'd know that one. Okay. The Old Arch Bridge. I'm singing one of these songs on the Catamount album, and this is called The Old Cellar Hole. When we were living in Marshfield, there was an old abandoned road that we used to like to hike down, and these abandoned roads, they're called Class 4 now. Back in Marshfield, we called it the Thrown Up Road. I don't know why. But these roads are all over the state, and they used to go past homesteads and farms and mills and so on. A lot of them are just now, well, a lot of them are now recreation trails. This particular one, we discovered an old cellar hole. And it's very poignant. It was totally peaceful, quiet, back road way out in the country. But we're sure people lived there. As a matter of fact, between the old cellar hole and what's left of the road, there's still lilacs that bloom every year. So this was somebody's home. We speculated on babies were probably born there. Maybe some old folks died there, who knows. And we were there one time, and it was in the winter. We just happened to raise our eyes in time to see a bobcat running across this snowy field. That's the only time I've ever seen a bobcat in the wild. I wanted to capture that scene in a song. And the song doesn't tell a story. It's almost like a landscape painting in words and music. When I put a melody to it, I found the melody worked very well for playing solos on the mandolin, banjo, and lead guitar, and so on. So I actually recorded sort of a half instrumental and half vocal. I'm going to sing you the vocal part, the old cellar hole. Half a mile's distance down an old Banjo road, in a clearing by a big old maple tree, wide open to the sunshine and the rain, looking lonesome as can be. There's just a cellar hole. There's nothing but a cellar hole where once upon a time stood a cabin and a little hillside farm, where people lived and labored on the land to keep the family safe and warm. Now winter wind is whipping down along the mountainside, while the bobcat bands across the fields of snow. And there's no one to remember how the people lived and died here long ago. Rusted chunks of metal and a few old weathered boards in a pit lined with crumbling blocks of stone. The burdocks and the brambles and the garter snakes have claimed it for their own. Standing in the silence where the children used to play, I can almost hear them laughing once again. The whinny of the horses in the pastures and the shouts of working men. Now winter wind is whipping down along the mountainside, while the bobcat bounds across the fields of snow. And there's no one to remember how the people lived and died here long ago. Now winter wind is whipping down along the mountainside, while the bobcat bands across the fields of snow. And there's no one to remember how the people lived and died here long ago. That's the old song. Let me mention one more song on the Catamountains back. It's called The Loon's Necklace. I somewhere picked up an illustrated book by Michael Caduto, and you might know Michael. He has a column in the Weekend Herald. He writes about wildlife topics and does a very nice job. But he's also a storyteller, and I believe he focuses on Native American tales. Well, this story is about a little boy, and he's sitting on a boulder by a lake, and he's crying. The little boy is blind. The loon swims up to shore. She says, "Little brave, what are you weeping for?" And he tells her, it's the colors of the rainbow and the beauty of the sky and the meadows and the brothers that I can hear but cannot see. The hunter and the brave I'll never be. The loon says, climb upon my feathered back, open wide your eyes. She said, get on my back, don't close your eyes no matter what happens. The loon dives to the bottom of the lake. Down again and down again through waters cold as starlight that bathed his eyes and left them clear and clean, till he stood upon that boulder with his eyes as bright as moonlight, gazing out upon a world he'd never seen. The little boy and his mother go around the shore and they collect shells. They weave them into a beautiful chain and they call the loon to shore and they drape it around her neck. And the shells all turn to feathers of a gleaming black and white to become the lovely necklace of the loon. I just think it's a beautiful little story. So I put it to, excuse me, I put my own lyrics to the story that I learned from Michael and recorded it. Very simple instrumental background, just an acoustic guitar and a wooden flute that almost sounds like a loon. I had a record of loon calls, you know, the yodels and these wonderful sounds they make. It was put out by the North American Loon Foundation or Association, whatever. And I got their permission to take some of the calls off that record and blend them in with the background to the vocal. And I think very effective. I love hearing that. Everybody, you know, those wonderful calls. The best thing about this song, in my estimation, is the lead vocal. It's a solo vocal, which Jay sang, and I have to say I think it's the best vocal treatment of any song, any of my songs that I ever recorded. So that's real special to me. The Loon's Necklace. Okay. Starts off with a song called Who Killed Orville Gibson? Orville Gibson was a dairy farmer in Newberry, Vermont. He went out to do the morning chores on a cold winter morning, 1957. Never seen alive again. Nobody knew what happened to him. I'm just going to quote you some of the lyrics. No one seems to have a clue and no one wants to talk. The silence in that town can make you shiver until the ice goes out and they find that missing man hog-tied, floating face down in the river. And then later, let's see, the rumors started flying while the truth stayed underground and left it all to endless speculation. Was it vigilante justice? Was it envy or revenge? It's still the best kept secret in the nation. And then the final verse, now half a century's come and gone, the case is cold as death. The book on Orville Gibson should be closed. But folks around that little town will tell you to this day that somewhere, somehow, someone out there knows. It's more like 70 years now since Orville Gibson perished. Case is never solved. So, the next song. Everybody knows Phineas Gage, right? Yes. All right. Okay. So Jay was a school nurse. She brought home a young reader's book once with this really grotesque illustration on the front. There's a skull, and there's this iron rod sticking right up through it. And she said, "Look at this. You have to write a song about this." I said, "No way." I sat down and read the book, and a couple minutes later, I'm walking around the house. Phineas Gage had a hole in his head, and everyone knew that he ought to be dead. Well, so I wrote the song. For those few of you who don't know the story, very quickly, Phineas Gage was a foreman of a railroad crew, Burlington and Rutland Railroad, and they were working over in Cavendish. They were blasting through the granite and laying the track. And as the foreman of the crew, Phineas Gage had charge of the tamping rod. This is a 3.5-foot long iron rod, weighed about 13 pounds or so. Blunt on one end for pushing the blasting powder down in the holes they drilled in the granite, and then the pointed end for inserting the fuse. Well, he got distracted or something. He dropped the tamping rod down the hole, set off a spark. The thing blew up, went right up through his head, entered behind the left cheekbone, went out the top of his head, taking a lot of gray matter with him. And there should be a fatal accident, but somehow he survived. The thing is, he was never the same man. He was, yeah, this is true. He was able to go back to work for a little while, but he couldn't hold the job. He had been the foreman. He was very responsible, very respectful, well-organized, a gentleman. After the accident, he was this disorganized, unpredictable, loud, profane, undependable guy. And his friends said, oh, Gage isn't Gage anymore. And he wasn't. So this is a really important case in neurobiology, I guess, the study of the brain, because it was already known by this time, it was 1848, by the way, it was already known that certain parts of the brain were related to locomotion or speech, hearing, what have you, but for the first time, the people studying the brain got the notion that, hey, behavior and personality also are related to, what was that, prefrontal, whatever it is. So it's a really, really important case, and it's still being studied. And a few years ago, I was down in Boston for a Red Sox game, had an afternoon to kill, and I got on a bus and I went to the Harvard Medical Museum, and there in a glass cabinet, Phineas Gage's skull and that rod. So, yeah, actually, I feel like I've met the guy. So, and yeah, anyhow, so I wrote the song, and after that album came out, somehow the British Broadcasting Corporation got wind of it, and they contacted me, and they were doing a radio program about the brain, and specifically the Phineas Gage case, and they asked for permission to play my song on that broadcast. So I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and I figured, okay, this is a no-brainer. So, the BBC broadcasts all around the world, so yeah, I said sure. This is the one and only Banjo dance song that I'm sure has been heard all around the world. Phineas Gage. Okay. The title of this album, Mystery and Memories, comes from, it's the lyrics to one of the songs called The Witch of Lake Champlain. In the 1990s, I was the executive director for the Vermont Youth Orchestra, and I was in a print shop one day. I don't even remember what I was doing there. I'm probably getting a program for a concert printed. Anyhow, the proprietor said, hey, Dan, do you know about the Witch of Lake Champlain? Well, he ended up giving me a folder full of old clippings, news, or magazine articles, I guess, and diagrams and so on. Excuse me. And the story is about a steamship called the Phoenix. This would have been mid-19th century when steam was coming in. And the Phoenix was crossing Lake Champlain, a midnight crossing from New York over to somewhere around Colchester. And it caught fire, burned to the water line, and sank. A lot of people lost their lives. And it was never established how that fire got started. A lot of people, I'm sure, assumed it was the boiler, creating the steam. Some sparks got out, it was cracked, whatever, started the fire, which sounds reasonable enough. But many people were convinced it was an act of sabotage. Somebody, perhaps from the sailing industry, a sailor, let's say, got on and started that fire on purpose. The sailing industry had dominated commerce, passenger service on the lake for a couple hundred years. And all of a sudden, here comes this new technology, and I already told you how I feel about that with the cell phones and stuff. This new technology was threatening their livelihood, taking over the business on the lake. And so there's a lot of resentment. So some people thought, well, maybe a sailor got on there as a passenger, set the fire, and burned the Phoenix on purpose. Also never proven. But it's rather interesting that when they went to evacuate the burning ship, one of the lifeboats was missing. Getaway car, right? Something like that. Yeah. So who knows? When I put the song together, the Witch of Lake Champlain, remember as I said, I had been working for the Vermont Youth Orchestra when I got the notion for this song. So I started thinking, well, how would it be if we brought in a little classical music and sort of blended it in with my banjo and guitar and all that stuff. And I asked the conductor if he could score a string quartet, 2 violins, viola, cello, get some of his best players, and record the thing with me. So he did. And in the recording session, which I'll never forget, we're in the studio, and I'm along one wall. I got my banjo, and I got that headset and a microphone and everything. And then on the other side is my brother with his mandolin, and we have a guitar and a big bass fiddle. This is the way I do most of my songs. And then here's this guy in the middle conducting a string quartet. And it worked. I thought it was pretty cool. Different. Actually, when I was starting to put this album together, the Vermont Arts Council had some grant money available for artists of all kinds, dancers and poets and playwrights and whatever, in support of projects designed to expand their artistic horizons. So I feel, okay, I can do that. And I wrote a grant application. Basically, I said, you give me the money and I'll expand. Excuse me. So, so that happened. And on several songs on this album, I brought, not all of them by any means, but on a handful I brought in other styles of music. A good example is a song called The Trackless Train. It's about on the Underground Railroad in Vermont, specifically the spur going right up through the western side of the state here. And I wanted to make this song a little different. Jay and I had the remarkable privilege and opportunity to travel in the Soviet Union and later in Russia with a cultural exchange program called Project Harmony. And we got to do some music of our own, but I was really interested in learning what I could about Russian traditional music. And I came across this style of singing where 2 women will form a lifelong partnership to sing together. Mostly, I think, or probably exclusively on Russian folk songs. And the way they do harmony is really different from what we do. They'll start on the same note. And as the verse goes along, one goes higher, the other goes lower, always in a nice blended harmony. And at the end, they come together on the same note again. So I decided I can do this. And I wrote the song to be sung by a pair of women, J.B. and Martha, and put the song together with that style of vocal. I was also able to find some professional Russian musicians, a husband-wife team in Providence, Rhode Island, and the man played a bayan, which is a big Russian-style accordion, and the woman played a stringed instrument called the domra. And so we actually went down to Rhode Island to record the instrumental track. So that song is called The Trackless Train. Another good example is a song called Black Cemetery. It's a little cemetery where we used to walk the dog, and I'm sure some of you have visited old cemeteries, and the stones are falling down, and you can hardly read anything on them. And that was the case in Black Cemetery, which I think might be a family name, I'm not sure. But there were several that I was able to decipher. And these verses like, behold and see as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I, as I am now, so you must be, therefore prepare to follow me. Spooky stuff like that. And I copied down as many as I could decipher and put them in a song. And I got an unaccompanied vocal quartet, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, to do this one. No instruments, no banjo, no guitar or anything. And it's they did a really good job. And the style of harmony that I used is on that song inspired by an old New England gospel tradition, which is sometimes called shape note singing or sacred harp singing. And instead of nice pretty triads, like, they use more like, these sort of stark sounding thing, and it's just, I think it's just perfect for that song. So that worked pretty well too. Oh, one more, okay. I love Dixieland music, and I wanted to put Dixieland in one of my songs, and the song is called the Pontiac Yodel. It sounds like a cowboy song, but it's about an old station wagon that my band used to travel in. So it was a Vermont band and a Vermont car and Vermont tags on it, so if I say it's a Vermont song, it is. Even though it sounds like a cowboy song. But, so I got 2 trombones and a clarinet. The clarinet player, Tommy Stenziola, was living up at Wake Robin. He's an old guy, but by God, he could blow that clarinet. He had a professional career. So I did this song and I blended in some Dixieland. Now, I'm going to see if I can sing it for you. I was a lot younger. You know what age does to your voice and everything else, but we'll see what happens. This Pontiac Yodel. Riding along, singing a song, astride my trusty old steed. No need to complain, I'm home in the range, old cowboys, a lot for me. I call her old Pete, a beauty she ain't, but how the old nag loves to run. I'll throw my hat, I'll be back in the saddle, a rough rider, son of a gun. Steed that I trust, she's a bucket of rust, a Pontiac Safari Supreme. But riding along with my yodeling song, I'm glad that a fella came to me. This is where the trombones and the clarinet come in. I can't do that very well for you, but believe me, it's great. I should have been born on a sparkling morning, out where the prairie dogs play, where you live at your ease and you do as you please, and the skies ain't cloudy all day. I'm stuck in the east with this rusty old beast, at least she smells horsey inside. So I feel right at home, and whenever I'm lonely, I jump in my pony and ride. I gotta know home where the buffalo roam, far from the prairies and plains. Well, I'm a cow-punching king whenever I sing that old Pontiac Yodel again. Oh, thanks. Well, I could almost still sing that. Anybody here from Chester? Oh, okay. Do you know about the Phantom? Okay. Right around the end of the previous turn of the century, around 1897 or 8 until 1903 or 4, there was a spate of burglaries in the town of Chester. These burglaries just went, and this is another true story, by the way. Burglaries went on and on. Nobody could figure out how this burglar was pulling these things off. Didn't matter how many padlocks and night watchmen they added to businesses, warehouses, stores. They just kept happening. They started to think of this burglar as a phantom. I'm going to sing you the song. Oh, let's see. Oh, the phantom. I better do it a little higher, okay? Oh, the phantom comes at night and he comes without constables perplexed. If you live in Chestertown, then you better hunker down, 'cause you never know where you'll be striking next. In a peaceful little village in Vermont, just the kind of place you'd like to raise your kids. When those burglaries began, not a woman, not a man could believe these things could happen, but they did. There were every businessman in town came to live in fear of heading home at night. All padlocks, bars, and chains only added to the game. The challenge was the phantom's chief delight. Soon a wave of panic stepped across the town, for the seeds of suspicion had been sown. And the good folks down in Chester had to wonder if the phantom, if that criminal could be one of their own. Oh, the phantom comes at night and he comes without a light, leaving all the local constables perplexed. If you live in Chestertown, then you better hunker down, 'cause you never know where you'll be striking next. Clarence Adams was a deacon in the church, and the #1 selectman in the town. So the folks all felt relieved when he told them I leave on the man's gonna track that woman down. For he studied every case of Sherlock Holmes, every crime of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Though he did all he could do, followed up on every clue. Seems his pen just got older every night. And one evening from a window at the mill, a shotgun blast attended through the land, and a moving trap and finally nailed the phantom. You guessed it, Clarence Adams was the man. Clarence Adams staggered home and then collapsed, and the doctor found his legs a bloody mess. When they searched the house and woods, found it full of stolen goods. Old Clarence had no choice but to confess. Some phantom burglar mystery had been solved, but the locals found it hard to understand how a leader in the town, the most respected man around, turned out to be the safest most wanted man. I think they'd be remorseful or contrite, but the jury heard his voice swell up with pride. Just like my old-time hero, Dr. Jekyll, I've nourished both my good and evil side. Oh, the phantom comes at night and he comes out of light, leaving all the local constables perplexed. If you live in Chestertown, then you better hunker down, 'cause you never know where you'll be striking next. Yeah, that's a true story, but it gets better. It really does. Clarence Adams went to serve his term at the state prison in Windsor. He was a model prisoner, polite, cooperative, never gave anybody any trouble. He donated a large collection of his own books to start a prison library, one of the first in the country. You know, so aside from all those burglaries, he seemed like a pretty good guy. But he hadn't been there too long, and there was an epidemic of pneumonia. And this is a vicious strain of pneumonia. People were desperately ill. People were dying in the prison, right and left. Almost makes you think of the COVID thing that we went through. Places where a large number of people are sort of concentrated in a small area, like hospitals, schools, churches, prisons, particularly dangerous. So one morning, Clarence Adams, the Phantom, was found in his cell, totally unresponsive, didn't seem to be breathing. They put him on a stretcher. They took him to the infirmary. One doctor working for this entire prison population, surrounded by desperately ill people, people dying. He took one quick look at Clarence Adams. He said, "Another dead one, get him out of here." So he went out of Windsor prison in a box, went to the undertaker. The undertaker put him in the ground, okay? End of story. About a month later, Clarence Adams is seen alive and well in Montreal, doing just fine. So, how are you going to explain that one? Well, this is a very intelligent man, very well read, and it wasn't just the Sherlock, Holmes, the crime novels and so on. He was interested in a lot of scientific topics, including mesmerism, which we now know as hypnotism. So maybe Clarence Adams was able to put himself into a deep hypnotic trance, pass himself off as dead, and escape Windsor prison in a pine box. Well, the undertaker was a friend, or at least an acquaintance of Clarence Adams. He was a man who just couldn't handle his finances, his money. He was always in trouble, always broke, always in debt. Well, after that box went in the ground, all of a sudden, Undertaker's got plenty. He's got money to burn, and he pays off all his debts. He's just doing fine. Now, Adams was a bachelor, no living relatives in Vermont. There were some distant relatives out of state somewhere. Those people were contacted. Permission was requested to dig up that grave and see who, if anyone, was buried in the box. Permission denied. So, all we know, I don't know. Looks like the Phantom Burglar got away with another one. So, I mean, to me, this is every bit as fascinating as the whole Phantom Burglar thing. And naturally, I wanted to write a song. Guess what? What else is new? But by the time I had all this additional information, this album, Mystery and Memories, is, as we say, in the can. I didn't have the time or the energy or really the money to write another song, round up musicians, have rehearsals, buy some more studio time. I just thought it would have been so cool to have the Phantom song, and then right after this, a song about Clarence Adams, like a sequel. But it didn't happen. But years later, I couldn't remember. I couldn't forget the story. So years later, I did write the song, and never performed it, never recorded it, except last year. I was doing an Ollie talk like this in Springfield. I knew there were going to be some Chester people there. Chester, yeah. And there were. So I figured, okay, I'm going to sing. We're talking about Chester, I'm going to sing this song. And I dug it out of I had buried it in a notebook somewhere with a few hundred other songs that will never see the light of day, which in most cases is just as well. But I found this song. I looked it over, I said, well, yeah, I think those lyrics work pretty well. And I started singing it to myself, and I said, no, this is all wrong. It was another minor key, sort of spooky, like the Phantom song and some of the others. But I'm thinking, wait a minute, this guy has pulled another fast one. He's one happy dude. This should be a happy song. So I completely rewrote the melody and made a new song out of it. Sort of a happy song. And I sang it last year in Springfield. That's the only time it's ever been brought in front of anybody, so you're my second victim. So. My name is Clarence Adams, the truth to you I'll tell, and those who call me criminal don't know me very well. You're looking for a motive, I'll tell you one and all. I did it for the thrill of matching wits against the law. They hauled me off in shackles, my sentence for to serve 10 years in Windsor prison, hardly all that I deserved. For terrorizing Chester, the town where I was born. No more the famous Phantom, just a prisoner in Vermont. They hauled me city, they hauled me up from prison. I sang that. A dreadful epidemic came ripping through the land. That prison like a charnel house with death on every hand. With panic and confusion, the order of the day. A perfect opportunity to make my getaway. At 5 a.m. I laid me down and slipped into a trance. At 6 o'clock the doc pronounced me dead with just a glance. By 7 I was on my way, stretched out in a box. Goodbye to Windsor Prison, all your bars and chains and locks. That's not enough range anymore. My friend the undertaker was a man of chronic debt. A little money changed in hands has never hurt me yet. I don't know who they buried in that box beneath the tree. The stone says Clarence Adams, that's good enough for me. So now you've heard my story, there's nothing left to tell. To all you folks in Chester, I bid a fond farewell. I'm living like a prince up here in Montreal. I guess the phantom bird against the last laugh. After all, yeah, I should have recorded that, especially when I had a voice. I did one more album of Vermont songs. This is called The Sleeping Sentinel, and came out in 2016 or something. Most people know about our famous Civil War soldier who was found sleeping on his sentry post, arrested, convicted of desertion, and sentenced to execution by firing squad. This was in Northern Virginia. He was guarding the Chain Bridge, crossing from Virginia over to Washington, D.C., which is a lucky thing for him because his buddies were able to get up a petition and take it across the river, get an audience with President Lincoln, and they obtained a pardon. So by some accounts, he was actually standing in front of a firing squad when they got back in. Instead of hearing the word fire, he heard his pardon read. A wonderful story, another true Vermont story. And I decided to do a lot more research, read a lot about this incident and the Civil War in general. And the soldier's name is William Scott. He was a private. He was from Groton, Vermont, a farm boy. And he was actually volunteering that night for sentry duty. He had served the previous night on the same assignment, and he was really tired, but he was substituting. He was volunteering to take the place of another Vermont soldier who was ill. So in any case, after he was sent back to duty, about 7 months later, he was involved. His unit was involved in a skirmish in Virginia. Rebels on one side and the other, Yankees on the other side of a little creek, and firing away at each other. Soldiers were falling down in the creek, wounded soldiers drowning. William Scott took it upon himself to go down into the creek and carry wounded Yankee soldiers back behind the lines. He was actually he had a wounded soldier on his back scaling up the bank, but he was brought down by 6 Confederate bullets. He really died a hero's death. There's so much information here. No way I could put it into one song. I ended up writing a series of songs and fragments and spoken parts and instrumental passages. If I might say so myself, there's a very good banjo version of the Battle Hymn of the Republic in there. But anyhow, a whole series of related songs and so on, and I call it the Sleeping Sentinel Suite. And it's it's the centerpiece of this final album here. But I had room for another half dozen songs, and I'm going to sing one of them for you. This is called Roaming Tinny. True song. Does anyone remember? Does anybody care? I used to have a neighbor, Roaming Tinny was his name. He worked the place with horses, all his kin had done the same. On down by Mount Scotty on a rocky piece of land. interstate was coming, it was in 1964. Modern world faster was knocking at our door. A man came by with money, said Homestead had to go. Documents say they could go over 10, he said no. This property's my birthright, and it's gonna take my stand. Take your money, take your paper, boy, get off of my land. Won't be no big old highway here as long as I'm alive, and I aim to stay right here until I die. Governor was for it, was gonna change Vermont. It's just a thing for Congress, it's the very thing we want. If some folks are dislocated, that's the price we'll have to pay. It's progress, it's coming thing you can't stand its way. The old cotter's just a nuisance, he's stubborn as a mule. He doesn't really mean it, why I'd have to be a fool. But the day they brought the devil's his was the day the old man died. Set fire to the farmhouse and he locked himself inside. Now the interstate's a fact of life we couldn't live without. You take it all for granted as you madly dash about, and there's very few remember how one man stood his ground. A simple man who kept his faith instead of backing down. This property's my birthright, and it's gonna make my stand. Take your money, take your papers, boy, and get off of my land. Won't be no big old highway here as long as I'm alive. I've gotta stay right here until I die. I don't know if any of you know about Romaine Teddy, but that's a true story. A real tragedy. He was just this guy trying to live his life, right? Here comes the interstate, not only through his property, right through his house. And they didn't have to do that. They could have. Anyhow, after this album was recorded, I was contacted by the Wethersfield Historical Society. And they were putting on a celebration of Mr. Tenney's life. They wanted to know if I could come down and sing that song. The song is actually in the performing repertoire of the Sky Blue Boys, which is my brother and me. So we went down, and it was a real privilege. We did some music, we sang that song. There were a lot of people who remembered Romaine Tenney. He was just a beloved figure in that community. This harmless old guy, did everything by hand, hitchhiked into town, didn't have a car. People were telling stories and anecdotes about him, and we actually got to meet some people, some members of his family. That was quite a privilege. Not necessarily religious. I mean, Jesus is in there, okay? But so is the Buddha. So is the Hawaiian goddess of the volcano. The story of Pandora from Greek mythology, and then a lot of other songs that to me have spiritual content. One of them is called Rebecca's Lament. Rebecca Park is buried in the Burgess Cemetery in Grafton, and on her tombstone there are 13 soul effigies. If you've walked in some of the old cemeteries, you might see these little moon-faced images. They represent the souls of the departed. You can see them on some of the really old stones. On Rebecca's tombstone, there are 13 soul effigies. She actually had 14 children who died in childbirth or very soon after. So just a really tragic situation. And I wanted to write a song about her, not just because of this, all that she went through, but just sort of celebrate the life of a woman, a real person who underwent this journey in life. She was only 40 years old. I wrote the song in the first, you can imagine, 14 children, 15 because the first one survived, age of 40. I wrote it in the first person. My name was Rebecca, just 40 years old when they sculpted the stone where my tragedy is told. So I recorded that song. Jay did the vocal. an emotional rendition of the song, I must say. It's really nice. One more song. This is the last one I'll do for you today. It's the last song on the last album, and it's called Woolly Bear. Now, in what way is the woolly bear caterpillar spiritual, you may ask? The woolly bear caterpillar, as you well know, if you look on the brown and black stripes, people are nodding. It's going to tell you, you see one in the fall, and will tell you what the upcoming winter is going to be like. Whether it's going to be long or short, how much snow we're going to get. Well, I got to thinking that woolly bear caterpillar must be smarter than all the rest of us. You know, we're trying to figure out what's coming down the pipe, what's going to happen next. We don't have a clue. We're looking for clues about that, the meaning of life, the whole bit. So I wrote a song. Let's see. I gotta remember it here. Look all around us in search of a sign that help us in these uncertain times. But the wisdom of ages no longer applies, and we're left just wondering why. So we seek out the sages, the gurus and such. We read all the books and look for a crutch, but the time-honored lessons have nothing to teach. And the pathway lies just out of reach. Woolly bear, what do you know? Will we have a mild winter or 10 feet of snow? Will we ever find a respite amid all this strife? Will we ever find peace in this life? Will we turn to the tea leaves, the old crystal ball, the pundits and prophets? Days one and all, still searching for someone to show us the way, the path to an uncloudy day. In our fear and